Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll give people a couple of minutes to join and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us. We'll give everyone another minute or two to join and then we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening. Thank you for joining us for the first Air Quality Coalition meeting. We're going to go ahead and get started with a couple of housekeeping items. My name is Sarah Caper. I'm with the Hillsborough Transportation Planning Organization. And as I mentioned, we'll go through just a couple of housekeeping things before we get to the coalition meeting itself. First, this meeting is being recorded. We will send you a follow-up communication with instructions on where to find the recording and related materials after the meeting. Microsoft Teams has several options that allow you to add live captions, change the language of on-screen materials, adjust high contrast visibility, and more. To do so, navigate to the three dots at the top of your screen to explore these options. We welcome your input. Please add any questions or comments you have in the chat, and we'll also have a question and answer period at the end of the meeting. We will take time at the end to go over any questions that were submitted in the question and answer period, as well as live questions. And if we are unable to address all the questions, we will follow up after the meeting. If you have future questions or comments about this project, we ask that you send an email to planner, PLANNER, at plancom, PLANCOM.org, using the words air quality included as part of your subject heading. This is an informational meeting. We are here to provide important details and answer initial questions. We look forward to building rich relationships and partnerships as we continue working together through this coalition. Thank you for joining us. We now turn the meeting over to Lizzie Baker, who will make introductions. Lizzie, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I am going to start sharing my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening and taking time out of your busy schedules to learn more about the Community Air Monitoring Network. So the Hillsborough Transportation Planning Organization is working with the University of South Florida, the Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County, and numerous community organizations to study air quality in underserved communities along the interstates in Hillsborough County. And we're doing that by creating a network of small, affordable air monitors. An additional part of this project is to build a coalition to help establish the network and also to help determine how we can improve air quality based on the project findings. So this evening, as Sarah mentioned, is the first ever coalition meeting. So we're really excited to start developing the coalition, and we really appreciate you being here with us this evening. So with that, we will get started with introductions. First, we'll hear from the project team. Each team will introduce themselves, and then we also want to hear from everyone online with us. So we do have a Mentimeter option, which you can see on the screen. So as the project team is introducing themselves, you can go ahead and get started with the Mentimeter, and then we will flip over to the Mentimeter so we can see everyone here with us. So I'll start out the project team introductions. My name is Lizzie Baker. I'm with the Hillsborough Transportation Planning Organization, and joining me today with the Hillsborough TPO is Sarah Caper, who you heard from previously, Wyatt Birchell, as well as Jocelyn Daniels. And we also have Gail Reese and Lionel Fuentes, who are helping us with the technical aspects of the meeting. So we really appreciate their assistance. And I will pass it on to Amy.
Thank you very much, Lizzie. And good evening, everyone. I really look forward to this conversation and getting to know you all. I am Professor Amy Stewart. I'm at the University of South Florida. And if my team could put on your cameras, if you can. I have a few students here that are all working hard on this project. First, Yong Hong, who's a doctoral student. And we also have Reno Solicito and Serena Eccles here. Yong Hong and Reno are in the College of Public Health, and Serena's from from anthropology. And then we have a couple of undergraduate students here as well, Matthew Mormino and Garrett Rawl, I believe. And they are undergraduates in environmental engineering who are also helping a lot on field work for the project. All right, with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Alana.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Elena Stevens, and I work with the Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County. I actually work with Michelle Jenkins. Unfortunately, she could not be here today, but she is our sustainability lead. And I also work with our air monitoring group. Jason Waters and Cody Winters are also part of our team. Again, I'm here representing us tonight, and it's just a real pleasure to be a part of this coalition and this project.
And also working on the Community Air Monitoring Project is Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association. And it looks like we have Lena on the line with us from Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association. Lena, are you there, and do you have Naya with you? Lena, if you're
she can unmute herself.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah.
All right, that's better, right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, we're the community partner, Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association, that has had the privilege of working with this team on this project. We focus on the youth, and the children are very, very interested and they learn so much. So it's been quite a time for us to participate with this team, and we look forward to what we are going to do many years ahead.
Wonderful, thank you. And at this point, we will look at the Mentimeter to see who else is joining us today. So if you've not already added your information into the Mentimeter, you can do that now. And it looks like we've got 2 people in the Mentimeter. And Wyatt, if you can actually go back to the first slide. So if people missed the code that they can use, the code is on the screen here, so you can enter that into menti.com, or you can use the QR code as well. We'll give people a second to join the Mentimeter. And see, we can go to the next. Oops, let's see, we can go to Wyatt, if you can go back. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. All right, wonderful. So we have Lama Alpha C with Hillsborough County, and we have James Nolianda, I hope I said that correctly, with the Department of Health, and Courtney Wright with Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. We have Brian Knotts, Tracy. Tracy, I apologize. I don't know if I will be able to pronounce your last name correctly, but I thank you for joining us. And we have students from USF, Harmony, good to see you, and Andrea. Wonderful, thank you. And we have Garrett. Wonderful, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. So we will head back to the presentation. And we will start to go over the agenda. So we've already done the introductions, but during this meeting today, we'll be providing you with an overview of the project, where we're at currently, how you can get involved, and we'll focus specifically on the coalition and the community air monitoring sites. And then we will also hear from USF on the logistical considerations and technical considerations when establishing a community site. And then lastly, we'll go over how community air monitoring sites are selected through that process, and how you can be a part of that process. And then we'll wrap it up and have time for Q&A at the end. So I'll start out with the project overview. As I mentioned previously, we are looking to study air quality in underserved communities along the interstates in Hillsborough County by creating a network of low-cost air quality monitors. And this actually started as a pilot study in 2021. I know some of you are familiar with the pilot study. And that was actually based on suggestions from the TPO's Technical Advisory Committee. And at that same time, we were hearing concerns expressed from the community about air pollution near the interstates. So based on that, we applied for and received a grant from Federal Highway, and we conducted a pilot study. And that pilot study would go on to test and analyze low-cost air quality monitors and the data from those monitors. We would go on to engage the community and establish pilot community air monitoring sites, and then also provide access to the data from those sites. And then we also developed methods to establish a larger community air monitoring network. So during the pilot study, USF identified Purple Air and the Clarity Node S, which you see on the screen, as the most suitable monitors for community air monitoring. And then those monitors were installed at 7 community air monitoring sites. And those sites are actually still in existence today, and we've had great partnerships with them. And in addition to that, USF and EPC work together to co-locate or place together the monitors at 2 EPC regulatory air monitoring sites, and that was for testing and calibration or data correction purposes. And then based on the success of that pilot study, we applied for and received additional funding from the EPA and Federal Highway to expand the pilot study and develop a larger community air monitoring network. So this project is fully funded by those grants. And so between 2023 and 2026, we will be establishing approximately 20 to 25 additional community sites along the interstates. We'll also evaluate the data and pollutant concentrations over a much longer period of time. And we will also be building capacity within the community around air pollution, air monitoring, and how the built environment plays a role. So I talked a little bit about how this came about, but why are we doing this? Ultimately, we are working towards building community capacity around air pollution and air monitoring. We also want to be able to characterize and continually monitor localized air quality in the community where people really spend their time, so where they live, learn, work, and play. And then we also want to be able to use the data from the communities to inform future transportation and land use planning and decision-making processes. In addition to that, we want to equitably improve air quality. So meaning communities are not disproportionately affected by traffic-related air pollution. And lastly, we really want to better understand the low-cost air quality monitors so we can learn how to most effectively complement the regulatory monitors. And these are all long-term goals of the project team that can really be informed and achieved by a community air monitoring network. So this is the general timeline for the project. There will be a lot to accomplish between March of 2023 and March of 2026 when the EPA grant timeline ends. But for today, we'll be focusing on where we're at right now in the December to May timeframe and looking ahead to the next few months. So right now we are at the coalition meeting and that's the first one, as I mentioned previously, so very exciting. In addition to that, we are also identifying future community air monitoring sites. So right now, this is the first phase of that. So we're looking to add about 8 to 12 community air monitoring sites right now. And that will be informed also by a public survey that will be going out. And in addition to that, right now, we're developing a guidebook, which is near completion. And this is going to serve as a reference for the community and also for community sites. And then we've also been working with Hillsborough County Public Schools to bring community air monitoring activities and education to the schools. And if we look ahead, we will be distributing the guidebook soon, so definitely keep your eyes peeled for that. And we will also be establishing the sites that we've identified in the summer. And the USF research team will be putting on training to teach people to install and also maintain the community air monitors. And so with that, I will pass it on to Sarah to talk about the ways to participate.
Thank you, Lizzie. If you could go to the next slide. So we'd like to share with you this evening a couple of different ways you can get involved in the project and with the coalition. Here you could see 2 of the items with the blue boxes: becoming a community air monitoring site and joining the coalition where we are today for community air monitoring. We'll talk about in a little more detail throughout this presentation tonight. But we also want to encourage you that there are other ways to get involved and stay involved if those aren't options that you're interested in, or if you have a range of things you'd like to participate in. One of them being using the resources that are being developed, like the guidebook that Lizzie just mentioned and the educational materials. You can also explore the air quality data online. You can see here 2 links. We can also put them in the chat for you. So you can go on right now and see what kind of data is available sometime that is convenient for you. There also will be other ways to volunteer throughout the process, and we'll be sure to share information with those who are on our contact list about how you can volunteer throughout the process. And then another option is to attend annual summits. We'll have our first one later in the year. More details on that will be coming, but we will have one each year throughout this project's lifetime. And if you can go to the next slide. Here's a little bit more information on the coalition where we are tonight. As Lizzie said, it's our first meeting of this coalition. The goal of the coalition is to help establish the community air monitoring network in underserved communities that are near interstates. We're going to be looking for guidance and input on locations, and also to engage the community through the resources available in this coalition and the partnerships that we'll have with it. We'll also be evaluating air quality data and asking this coalition to help with the development of and establishment of recommendations based on the findings that we're seeing with the data and analysis. The coalition will meet quarterly, and later on we'll ask you a couple more Mentimeter questions, and some of them will be about what your preferences are for meeting information. And finally, we really wanted to stress thank you for being here, and these coalition meetings are open to the public. We encourage community leaders, advocates, representatives from different community organizations, youth, residents, other government partners. Please come and participate and share this with your networks if you know people who might be interested in either the coalition or the work that we're doing. With that, if you could go to the next slide. Some more Mentimeter questions for you. The Mentimeter information is in the chat, but we're going to open it up for a couple of questions now. And the first thing we'd like to hear from you is, what else would you like to know about the coalition? So if you could take a moment, think about what you'd like to know, and we'll do our best to answer the questions either later on in the meeting or after. We'll follow up if we're unable to answer everything tonight. We'll give people just a couple minutes. If you're having trouble, it is www.menti.com, and the code is 8418-4686.
I'll flip back so people can see what the code is.
Great, thank you, Lizzie. And the input that we hear from you tonight will really help us with shaping the coalition. So we appreciate any thoughts or feedback you might have. There will be several opportunities throughout tonight's meeting to ask different questions and get different responses and feedback from you, and also a chance towards the end for you to ask questions as well. We'll give it another minute and then we'll move on. Great. Looks like we have a couple questions coming in. Thank you. We'll give people another minute and then we'll move on to the next question and we'll come back to some of this information later on tonight. Okay, well, let's move to the next question, which is, what are your ideas for the coalition? Do you have any suggestions or thoughts that we should be considering as we think about what the coalition is and what it can do? So if you could take a moment now and put in any ideas, we'd really love to hear your thoughts and feedback.
And we'll have questions also later on in the Mentimeter about the coalition. So if you think of anything or anything comes to mind later on, we can also address it at that point.
Yeah, great. And I think we can leave this question open. So we'll leave this on in the background if you think of anything. And oh, great, see some questions coming in. We'll give it another minute and then we'll keep moving with the presentation, but leave this open until the next Mentimeter question comes up. But great to see the suggestions and thoughts coming in. Okay, well, we'd like to move on with the presentation, but please feel free to keep adding your thoughts and questions to the Mentimeter poll, or you can put questions in the chat as well. I'd like to introduce Lena Young Green, who I know is here tonight from the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association, and she is the founder of the Tampa Junior Heights Civic Association, is going to talk a little bit about their experience as our community consultant. So Lena, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share some of the things that we have been doing. We are Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association, and we are immediately, the neighborhood is located immediately north of downtown. And we are talking about air monitoring. One of the special or identifying things about Tampa Heights is that we are connected to the interstate on the east side of our neighborhood. And then the interstate also comes down and to the south, and it turns west from our neighborhood. And in addition to that, I-4 starts immediately at that south section of our neighborhood. So if there's anywhere where we would think we want to measure our air quality, it's in Tampa Heights. We are so close to the interstate that that's one of the things that we want to know what is going on, because we know air quality affect our families, it affects where we live, it affects our air. And so we were glad to be a part of this effort when we were invited to join. Again, I also reference that we are a junior civic association. So one of the things that our children do is learn about being civically involved in our community. If you go down to the next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the slide, you'll see our children, they are so smart. Once they get introduced to things that is happening in their neighborhood, they all want to know what's going on. They all want to be a part. And this project gave them an opportunity to really, really participate and ask a lot of questions and learn what do we mean about air quality and how that affects them. And so one of the things that they do is joining the team with the monitoring and learning more as they become more involved. Here you'll see we had our meeting at our location in Tampa Heights. And this is an opportunity that we would like to invite all other neighborhoods to become involved and be a partner and a member of the coalition, because within this coalition, we get to really understand our communities and know what is going on. And in addition, we have the expertise of our partners that share information with us. We have the university, we have the EPC, and of course we have Lizzie and her team that really works closely with us. And we're able to speak with them at all times and understand what's going on, not only in our local area, but at the state level and also at the federal level. Could you go to the next slide, please? Here we're talking about the role of the community and the air monitoring sites. In Tampa Heights, as you saw in the previous slides, that there are 3 locations that are in Tampa Heights where the monitors have been placed. There are 2 monitors that are right next to our community center. One is on our building at our community center. And what's really special about these is that our children get to walk out and look at what's happening in real time with the monitors and able to understand about the air quality. One of the great things about the children's involvement is they went out one day and they saw the air quality, they were monitoring it, and right next to our center, and then they walked down a couple blocks to our garden, and they noticed the change that happened from where the center is to the garden. And one of their conclusions were, after they had their discussion, was that the trees that were closer to the garden affected the air quality. So you could see they're hands-on and actually learning about their community in real time. And the other bullets show that we participate in the quarterly meetings, and then we engage with community members about the air quality project. What we do also is when we have events in our community, we ask the team to come out and actually set up tables so that others in the community could understand what's going on as well, and also invite people to participate and learn more. So that's another opportunity for being a community member in this coalition. So there are real benefits for that. You go to the next slide. Here is where our children again are very much involved. You see them with their notes and their clipboards, and they're observing and they're learning in real time what's going on in the community. This is training the generation for tomorrow so that they'll be knowledgeable already as they participate in these projects. Of course, it ties in with their academic learning. STEM is very much a part of all of the things that they learn, including the health. They also learn leadership, which is a core part of our organization. And then they learn how to analyze and determine what's going on around them. We love that picture, which is the third one on the right. Not only do our children participate, but last year, a group of 3 of them actually traveled to the National Conference of Planners in Jacksonville. And I believe we understand it was the first time ever that children participated in this conference. and they were actually able to do presentations themselves and share the information that they've learned in their community. That was just awesome. It was a great experience for the children, and they're looking forward to being a part of any other conference or opportunity to showcase themselves. They really talked about their community. Some of the children identified that their community in Townland Country, because they have flooding and they have other environmental issues, how that connected with what they needed inside of their community. Another group identified some other things that were needed in their community, but it really gives the children a great opportunity to learn. And children bring their parents into it. That's one thing that we know. So for those who are on this meeting, from the community's perspective, I would urge you to be a part of this coalition. And also, I want to say a big thank you to the experts who have given us the opportunity to inform and educate our children early. And community people like to be a part of their community and being helping to make decisions and guiding the activities. So please come in and join this coalition, and we look forward to a lot more, like I said, in the future years. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Linnea, for the wonderful presentation. Just to reiterate on what Linnea had mentioned, air monitoring sites will be involved in hosting, installing, and maintaining air quality monitors. They'll also be participating in quarterly coalition meetings and engaging with community members about the air quality project. So thank you, Linnea, for a really great presentation. To focus on eligibility, there are 3 categories of community air monitoring sites: partner, comparison, and affiliate community air monitoring sites. I'll focus on eligibility requirements for each. Partner sites are identified as those sites located in underserved communities within 1,000 feet of a major interstate in Hillsborough County. While comparison community sites will be located 3,000 feet from an interstate. Both partner and comparison sites must meet logistical considerations for proper air monitoring operation and will receive technical guidance and support throughout the process from USF and the TPO. Grant funding may be available through 2026 to cover the cost of air monitors at partner and comparison sites. Affiliate sites, we welcome full participation in the project. So for any organizations or individuals, technical support and guidance can be made available to those who wish to purchase a recommended air monitor. While grant funding is not available for this option, we will welcome full participation and are available to offer that support for the project. I will now pass it over to Dr. Amy Stewart from the University of South Florida to talk about logistical considerations.
Thank you, Wyatt. Okay, so we are very involved in helping to set up monitors and doing training with the monitors and doing data analysis. One of the first things to talk about is once we have a potential site, is what are we looking for in terms of putting up a monitor? Where do we look to install that monitor? So I want to give you guys some ideas of what those things are, so you can think about your own site and maybe some places where a monitor might go. All right, so next slide, please. All right, so the first is environmental requirements. The most important one is that the location is appropriate for the sampling purpose. And we basically have these primary partner sites which are focused on traffic pollution from the interstate. So that's why we're looking for sites that are within 1,000 feet from the highway. And we want there to be unobstructed airflow in the direction of the highway. So we're looking for something where we're going to be sampling air coming off the highway a lot of the time. And then the comparison sites were focused on where we hope traffic pollution may be lower, but in the same neighborhood. So we can look and see how does their pollution change as we get further away. And these are sites that are more than 3,000 feet. So outside of the range of where we would expect to have a substantial signature coming from the roadway. And so that's kind of the number one thing that we're looking for. And then the second is that we want a location that's away from nearby interferences of different kinds. So the biggest type of interference would be a local air pollution source. And what I mean by local, I mean like really close within several feet, within about 30 feet of the monitor. So that would be something like a diesel generator, a barbecue, a fire pit, a vehicle idling area, a smoking zone, a construction area, garden solvent or supplies, equipment, water dispersal fountains or air conditioning units. We won't try to stay away from the inlets and outlets of those. We also want to be away from airflow obstructions because we're trying to get a good sample of well-mixed air in the area. And so we look for places where we're not in a corner, we're not in, caged in, but there aren't multiple walls around. Often we'll put a monitor on a wall, but we don't want there to be other walls around or other dense vegetation that could interfere with airflow. And also avoiding being near high voltage power lines for electrical interference purposes. And then finally, we look for an accessible community location. We want people to see the monitor and to be able to experience that it's there and what it's doing and to be able to see the signage. So we want a place that's visible. And that there's a place to put that informational poster. That poster talks about the project, talks about what's being monitored, and provides a QR code so people can go and get more information and get to the data. And we want the area to be visible to the community during common activity. Someplace where people pass by is ideal. And then we want the monitor needs to be accessible for maintenance. So and we use a ladder, so we need some place where we can put a ladder. Sometimes you might have a great place on a wall, but you can't really, it's hard to get to it with a ladder, so that's important too. So those are all things that we're looking for sort of in general in the environmental requirements. Next slide. And then as far as installation is concerned, there's a few other things to keep in mind as you're thinking about where in your site might a monitor go. We can install on a wall or a pole. We could even put in a pole, with your help on your property if that was wanted. We try to install at a height, ideally we want to be near the breathing zone, but we also need to, we don't want tampering with the equipment. So we put up just a little bit higher. So usually around 10 feet, we've found to be a good height. So it's sampling near the breathing zone, but isn't going to have any problem with being tampered with. So we can make sure we're getting good air quality measurements. And then we want to be away from any location, say if we're on a building wall, anything that might be inundated with water during rain events. We don't want to be there. And then there are different requirements for the two different types of monitors. The purple air monitor, which measures particles, different size cuts of particles, but it measures particles. That it needs two things. It needs to have a Wi-Fi where it can upload data, because that data are then shared to the website that you all see, and anyone can access that data. So we need a Wi-Fi that we can use to upload the data. And then the second is a power outlet. It requires a plug-in power. Typically we do that, we connect a extension cord to an outdoor power outlet, but those are the things that the purple air needs. So that means, typically we're talking about being close to a building, something with where Wi-Fi is available and power is available. And then on the other hand, the Clarity Node, this one is actually better for places like parks or things where we don't have power and we don't have Wi-Fi. It uses cellular. and satellite, I'm sorry, and solar, it has a solar panel. So what we need for that to work is an unobstructed view toward the south for the solar panel to get good sunlight and continue powering it. So those are kind of just an overview of the things that we're looking for. Typically what we would do for a site is we go out and we kind of do a walk around with the host to look and see different possible sites in order to identify maybe what the best one would be to put up a monitor and signage. So with that, I think that's all that I have. So I think I'm not sure who I'm passing it to. I was told that, but now I've forgotten. So whoever is, I think it's Lizzie. It's Lizzie's next.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so I will be talking to you about the site selection process. So this is really how we identify the community air monitoring sites. So a really big part of this process is community collaboration and engagement. We really want residents to gain an understanding of air quality, but it's also really important because the community sites could not exist without it. So community engagement is ingrained throughout the entire site selection process. And for that process, we take a multi-step approach. So the first step is to identify and prioritize the areas to focus community air monitoring efforts. After that, we then explore potential sites within the communities that we've identified. And we get suggestions from the community and stakeholders as well. After that, we will confirm the sites, conduct the field visits as Dr. Amy Stewart described, and then lastly, we sign agreements and the monitors and the signage are installed. So right now we are exploring the potential community sites, and we're also in the middle of engaging the community and stakeholders. So if we take a closer look at the first two steps of that process, to prioritize the areas and then also explore the sites for community air monitoring, those are actually informed by two criteria. So for that, we narrowed down the areas using the community selection criteria. That's this first part here. And that's actually based on the EPA's EJ Screen tool, the TPO's non-discrimination and equity plan, modeling and research, as well as input from the community. So there's three main factors that we look at, and that one is an environmental factor, which is the proximity to interstates. So looking at locations that are close to the interstate. And then we also look at the demographic factors, the primary ones being areas with low income populations and a majority of people of color. Based on the kickoff meeting, we actually added in some additional demographic factors that you can see on the screen here. And then lastly, we look at community access and engagement. So is this really an area where we will have opportunities to engage the community? And then once we know those areas, we start to explore and prioritize the potential sites based on the site selection criteria. And that is, again, looking at community access and engagement, but more specifically, is this a place where people congregate and spend a lot of time? We also look at, again, the proximity to the interstate, but as you heard previously, we look more specifically at locations within 1,000 feet of the interstate and a handful of sites that may be located more than 3,000 feet of the interstate. In addition to that, we consider whether or not an organization is really interested in being involved in the project long term. And we also have logistical considerations, which Dr. Amy Stewart just spoke about. So based on the community selection criteria, the pink shaded areas that you see on the screen here, those were prioritized for community air monitoring for this phase. So as I mentioned before, we're looking to add about 8 to 12 sites here. So we're exploring locations within these areas. and getting input from the community as well on potential future community air monitoring sites. And so we've identified the areas to focus on, but how do we actually identify the community air monitoring sites themselves? There are two methods that we use to identify the sites. One method is more criteria-based, so we rely really heavily on the community selection criteria and the site selection criteria that I just spoke about to narrow down and identify the organizations and entities that could be potential sites. The way we do this is actually through a mapping exercise where we locate potential organizations within the shaded pink areas. And in addition to that, we actually also consider feedback from the pilot study and the kickoff meeting. So for example, previously we heard that people were really interested in focusing on parks and on schools. So we take that into consideration. We also consider the distribution along the interstates. So the grant funding is for monitors to be located along all three interstates, I-275, I-4, and I-75 within Hillsborough County. So we do consider that distribution. And then after that, we will contact the organizations or community-based entities. We raised awareness about the project and determine their level of interest. So the other method that we use to identify community air monitoring sites is through community feedback. And so we also definitely pay a lot of attention to locations that are really interested in being a community air monitoring site and in the project. So we consider interest expressed by the community, organizations, and stakeholders. And we've already heard a number of organizations who are interested in the project and being a site. So that's very exciting and really great to hear. In addition to that, we also consider input from the coalition, and this will be particularly important and really impactful when we repeat this process a year from now as well to select additional community air monitoring sites. And then lastly, we also receive input from the community through a public survey, and this will be coming out, and you will hear more about that from Wyatt. And so once we actually have that list of the interested organizations, then both of those are, that list is evaluated against the site selection criteria, again, to determine whether they're eligible to receive a grant-funded monitor. But as you heard earlier, even if a location does not receive a grant-funded monitor, they can still participate in the network, and we more than welcome that. And so with that, I will hand it over to Wyatt to talk about the survey a little bit more.
Well, thank you, Lizzie. So just as she has mentioned, this survey will be one of the ways we identify sites to inform site selection. The survey is intended to gather community input on how to expand the community air quality monitoring network. The survey will gather public input to inform site selection by allowing you to place on a map the locations well suited for project participation. The survey will also give you the opportunity to learn about different participation options and to select how you wish to be involved in the project. We encourage you to check the project webpage, which is linked below in the slide. And also keep an eye out on your emails for the survey, which should be available very soon this spring. And in the meantime, please just be thinking about those sites and those interested partners that would like to be part of this project. And yes, so as we think about next steps, the survey, which we mentioned, please do be checking the project webpage frequently. That's where the survey will be located. We'll also be sending out email alerts on that survey. USF and EPC will be co-locating monitors for testing prior to installation at community sites. Also beginning to prioritize sites to receive grant-funded air monitors, so we're continuing to explore that. The field visits, which were mentioned earlier, which involve the TPO and USF, offering specific guidance on the best location at a partnered site to locate a monitor. So we'll continue to be providing that for those sites which have been identified. The guidebook, which is very comprehensive and covers many aspects of this project and the role of air quality and its impacts in Hillsborough County and also national standards, is an excellent reference for the community on both the topic generally and then also very much a great resource for the community and community sites on the particulars. And that will be available soon, as was mentioned earlier. We will host quarterly coalition meetings. The next will be in the summer. And we have some Mentimeter questions to gauge your preferences for meeting times, format, and some of the particular areas of interest you would like to see covered in the future.
I'll keep it on
And-
this slide for just a second so people can use the
Yes.
code if they need to.
That would be great. Yes, this is really important. So just make sure. Okay, there's one response. Seems to let's see. Oh, good. So it looks like Wednesday is the preferred day. Okay, give it maybe just a few more moments. Give it a moment or two for others to respond. Okay, so neck and neck between Wednesday and Thursday. We can go ahead and move now. Oh, spoke too soon. All right, so we'll go ahead and now ask for your preferred meeting times. And as those participating then in this have probably recognized by now, you are able to pick among the multiple options. Okay. We'll go ahead and move into the preferred meeting format. Okay. Thank you all for participating. So as we think about the future coalition meetings, we would like to receive from you, what would you like to know? Topics and areas of interests that we might be able to cover in the future together. So any ideas and suggestions, greatly appreciated. Okay, very good. And this is very much an initial coalition meeting. So we're providing a lot of important detail and background. This coalition in the future really is oriented toward, okay, got yeah, I think these are great. Yeah, and the coalition is designed to kind of foster cooperative relationships and be able to learn from each other as the network grows and new sites are established. How can we learn from one another to kind of share progress and updates with one another? So yeah, I'm seeing a lot of interest in educational background on air quality and its relationship to health, which I think is an excellent topic. Can also preview a lot of that information in the upcoming guidebook. Yeah, collaborations among different projects to ensure we're using the same best practices. Yeah, that's going to definitely be a theme with the coalition as it moves forward. Okay, well, this will remain open and you're more than welcome. In fact, you're encouraged to go ahead and add your responses in there. I will go ahead and turn it back to Lizzie and we can begin questions and answering any questions you have and receiving comments that you have.
Thank you, Wyatt. Well, and that concludes our presentation. I really appreciate, again, everyone taking time out of their evening to spend it with us. And we will now go into questions. If we have any questions from the chat, we can address those. I know we have some from Mentimeter that we can also address. But also, if we have anyone who is interested in raising your hand, we can go back and forth between the two options, and we can take some questions live, take some from the chat, and I'll go back and forth between the two. If we don't by chance get to all of the questions, then we can send a follow-up email with some responses to those questions. And I will start with the chat to get the questions rolling. Sarah or Jocelyn, were there any questions that you saw from the chat? And in the meantime, as they're asking the question, please feel free to raise your hand and we can also take questions that way.
Yeah, so one of the questions that we received is how often will the results be published?
So I believe that question is related to the data analysis piece of it. And so we'll have annual reports for every year that come out, and
there's also data available. So the results are available in real time, basically. but then the analysis results are done on a periodic basis.
Yeah, so if you go onto actually the QR code on the screen here and also the link, that takes you to the project webpage. And embedded in that page is actually the maps that show the real-time air quality maps. So you can look at the data real time online.
Thank you. A related question about data and where we go from here is somebody asked, if air quality is poor at a location, does this project propose solutions? Maybe you could talk a little bit about what the next steps or what the results of this project might be.
Yeah, so part of this is we are discovering what the data will tell us. And so based on the findings, we will be proposing recommendations. There will also be recommendations that come out of the coalition. So really what the recommendations will be are kind of to be determined, but we can come up with project ideas that would help decrease air pollution in a particular location potentially. If we identify like hotspots or areas with more pollutant concentrations, we could focus efforts there. And Amy, I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say that a big part of this is provide the educational piece is to provide community with information about air quality and also about the ways in which air quality is affected, what are the sources and what things can be done to improve air quality. So part of the coalition is kind of getting your feedback also on what, if, you know, what results we find, what is it that people would like to see done? And you know what some things that can happen, you know, we want to empower people to have a voice in different decision-making processes, whether it be air quality management processes, whether it be planning processes. So that's kind of part of the process of getting the data and also providing information that can be used for coming up with solutions. And so we will be talking about recommendations, but we also hope to hear from the coalition about what you would like to see based on the data.
Great, thank you. Looking at some of the other questions we received, somebody asked about, are there other funding sources and can we expand beyond PM2? Kind of two different questions, but if you could maybe talk a little bit about the funding sources and the PM2s.
Yeah, so I can just say a little bit about the pollutants. So the pollutant, right now we're measuring particles. PM 2.5 is one of them. It means fine particles, so really small particles that get down into your lungs. But the monitors that we're using currently measure multiple particles. They measure larger particles as well. And so there's a variety of pollutants that are measured. We're also measuring NO2. NO2 is used often as a surrogate for traffic-related air pollution. NO comes from traffic, and then it gets converted really quickly to NO2 in the air. And so that kind of tells. So we're using these pollutants that help us to understand air pollution from traffic. We have been looking at and thinking about other pollutants as well, like black carbon and benzene. But it's more, those pollutants are more difficult to measure with affordable monitors that we can put in lots of places. So that those things are things we're thinking about. But for now, we're focused on different types of particles as pollutants and NO2. But yeah, we want to hear from you if there's something you want that you're interested in. Tell us that as well, and that can go into our thinking process.
Thank you. And maybe, Lizzie, you could talk a little bit about funding sources involved with this project?
Yeah, so right now there are a ton of grants out there. And so the EPA has actually, they put out a lot of different grants, specifically for community air monitoring. There are other options out there for other federal grants. And I know actually Dr. Amy Stewart and I know Lena with Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association, they've also been keeping their eyes out for additional grants. And so that could be to add on to this project, but it could also be to identify like a more regional network potentially, if that's an interest for someone. So there are definitely other funding sources out there as well.
Thank you. Okay, looks like we have a couple other questions from some of our earlier discussions. And so somebody asked about if we're looking at adding any additional park sites.
Yeah, we are. We through the criteria-based process to identify the sites, we've actually identified a handful of additional parks. Some of them are close to the road, so within 1,000 feet, we do have a couple that we've identified as potential comparison sites as well. So yeah, we definitely have park sites. We are keeping an eye out for schools as well. And we've identified some schools.
Hey,
that could
Lizzie,
be
actually,
sites.
that ties really well into one of our next questions, which is asking about engagement with schools. And I know you touched on it briefly, but could you elaborate a little bit more about the work being done with the schools?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really exciting collaboration and partnership with the schools. So we've been working with the schools in a couple different ways. One is we have monitors that are located at schools. So one currently is at Seminole Elementary School. One currently is at Robert J. Saunders Library, which is right next to Booker T. Washington Elementary School. And so we have schools as community air monitoring sites. But in addition to that, we are also working with the Hillsborough County Public Schools Green Team, which is their sustainability initiative, and they have environmental clubs and promote everything sustainability related. And Dr. Amy Stewart's research team, they've been working with the Green Team to identify educational materials that can actually be introduced to the schools. And Amy, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit more about the work that you're doing with them on that.
Yeah, briefly. Yeah, a couple of my students have been kind of pulling together the different materials that are available, from videos to lesson plans that for different levels of school, elementary school, middle and high school, that basically on topics like that were mentioned in some of the questions. You know, where does air quality come from? What are the health impacts of air quality? What can we do if we find out that someplace has has air quality that's not good enough? So kind of the connections. How does a built environment and planning and affect air quality? All of those things. So the students are pulling together materials for the Green Team. The Green Team has the expertise in putting together lesson plans for K through 12. So they'll take those materials and make them into lesson plans for their clubs and for their classes. But yeah, so we're in the middle of doing that now, and we really look forward. We're really excited to work with them further and to see those things come to fruition. So, and my students are doing, I think they're doing a great job pulling together a lot of different materials.
Great, thank you both for those great answers to our questions. Looking through the rest of the comments in the chat and the Mentimeter, it looks like most of the rest of what we received, I think, are suggestions for the coalition and things that people would like to hear in future meetings. So we Really appreciate that. If anyone does think of any other questions, they want to raise their hand using the raise hand feature in Teams or put it in the chat, we'll give you another minute or two to put those in there. But we have logged all of the questions, both in the Mentimeter and the chat. So we will be following up on all of them as we think about future coalition meetings and topics and making sure that we integrate what we hear from you. And maybe, Lizzie, you could just talk briefly about how people can expect to get that survey that was mentioned, because I think that's coming up real soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So the survey, we will be distributing it via email. It will also be going out it'll be on our website, and we'll also put out a newsletter article through the Plan Hillsborough newsletter. So there will be multiple ways to get it. We'll also put it out on our social media account. So you'll have a lot of different formats in which you can access it and also share it.
Great, and thank you. And can you just share a little bit about what's going to happen after today, what people can expect to receive next? I know we talked about it briefly, but maybe a reminder, and then if you could wrap us up, I think that's all of the questions that we have.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so after this, what we'll be doing is we'll actually be sharing we've recorded this, and so we will be sharing that on our YouTube account. We have a community air monitoring channel, so we'll add it to that. We will also be sending out another link with the PowerPoint, and so you'll be able to access that. And if there are any follow-up questions that we missed by chance, then we'll also send any follow-ups on that. And I think, as Sarah mentioned, that concludes the question part of it. If anyone does have any follow-up questions, our contact information is on the screen and in the PowerPoint, so please do reach out to us. I know all of us would love to talk to you and hear your ideas. And yeah, I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
It's
you.
a real pleasure to be here.